Hi, thank you for joining me today. I am Patty Simpson. I am the founder and CEO of DW Simpson Global Actuarial and Analytics Recruitment. And today I'm going to talk about resume preparation, specifically as it pertains to actuaries. Now, a number of the things I'm going to talk about are things that are talked about all over. However, I think there's some things that I've seen all over the internet and other places that do not get touched on, which I think is really, really important. So this video is for the entry-level actuary through the very senior level actuary. So first and foremost, your resume must tell a story, meaning there should not be gaps anywhere in your resume. And if you have a gap, then you need to fill that in, meaning literally type out why the gap is there. Because whether it's a talent acquisition person or a human resource person or a very, very busy actuary or a C-suite individual, if they have 5, 10 resumes to look at and they're looking at it and they see big gaps with no explanation, and yet the next resume or the next resume after that is perfectly laid out that tells them a story, that person's going to get the interview, not you. So make sure there are no gaps whatsoever, that it tells a story. Keep it short, but enough to explain what was happening professionally and or personally. If it's personal, keep it personal, professional. So what an example of that would be is after you graduated from college, you decided to tour Europe for a year. That's what you would write. Took a year off and went to whichever countries you went to or whatever you did. But just make sure that there's not a hole in your history. So now going back to specifically the actuarial resume. First and foremost, there should be your exam level. So of course, your heading, your name. If your name is ambiguous, then it's important to give yourself a salutation. It's a good way to start off the conversation where the person knows the voice that they're going to be speaking to. Now, these days, it doesn't matter if it's a telephone call. These days, it's either Zoom or GoToMeetings or what have you. Most employers have not gone back to bringing people on site right away. So it's very important that the person is prepared for who they're going to see. And I recognize with LinkedIn and all sorts of other social media, they might be able to look you up, but sometimes at the beginning of the process, they don't have time to do that. So setting yourself up to have everything be as comfortable as possible is really important. So now your actual resume. First and foremost, your exam level. So if you've passed exam 1 or FM1, whichever exam that you have passed, you should write that you passed the exam and the date that you passed the exam. If you've not taken an exam yet, then you need to put down when you will be sitting for that exam so that the employer sees that there is a commitment to taking that exam. Of course, if you're more experienced, if you're an associate of the Society of Actuaries or an associate of the Casualty Actuarial Society or a fellow of the Society of Actuaries or a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society, then of course you would put that, as well as if you're a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. So start with the professional designation. Often we see, of course, the more senior level people, right after their name, they'll have FSA, MAAA, FCAS, MAAA. But it's very important to start with the exams because when we get all of our positions, one of the biggest things is the exams and how many years of experience. Or if it's an entry-level person, how many exams at a minimum, and whatever types of technical skills that they'd like to see. Is it R or Python? Something like that. Then the next thing is just kind of keep all the education. And often, I know senior level people do not want to put their education up there, but that's the overall of your educational experience. So if you got a management certificate from Northwestern or whatever it might be, it's good to just get that all out there right at the top. Then the next thing, of course, is your professional experience. And again, it's very important that there are not any gaps. And if there are, that you fill in what those gaps were. Also, it's very important to show, for instance, if you are a student actuary, and when I say student in this instance, I mean an actuary that has not yet reached a designation, but is taking the exams, but might have 2 to 4 or 5 years of experience. It's very important to show an upward trajectory. So if you've had rotations and you've gotten promotions with those rotations, it's very important to spread out those headings. So for instance, you might have started as an actuarial intern, and that was your summer months. Then, of course, the employer could see that you went back to school, and then that's the time that you graduated. And then now that company hired you, and you were hired in as an actuarial analyst, and you were there for 1.5 years. And then you'd list all the things that you did under that time. And then when you were promoted to your next level, senior actuarial analyst, for instance, the dates of that time, because it's very important to show an upward trajectory. So let's say you've moved to a different company. It still needs to look as if you've been on an upward trajectory. And because title levels can be so different from company to company, what a vice president is at one company doesn't necessarily have the same gravitas as a vice president at another company. So it's just important that the responsibilities themselves show that there's been an upward trajectory. So professional experience, that all gets laid out. For senior level people, it's a real myth. It doesn't have to be 1 page. Certainly 10 is too much. But if you have 20 years of experience or 25 or 30 or 35 years of experience, you've done a lot during that time. And so you want to be precise, but you don't need to cram it all into 1 page, because the beauty also of the actuarial world is an actuary is going to be reviewing that very senior level actuary, whether it be the chief actuary or the chief risk officer or the COO. They would have worked, or the CEO or the CFO, they would have worked with actuaries. So they're going to know what they're reading. So it's just very important that you don't hold yourself to that 1 page rule, which is what everybody always talks about. Now, if you're an actuarial student, that's different. You can condense everything into 1 page. It's also very important to show your personality and your interests in your resume. So any volunteering that you do, any interests, anything, and I'm talking more about the actuarial students. So for senior level actuaries, it's important, if you've volunteered with the SOA or CAS, if you've held board positions, your volunteer work, things that show that you've served your profession. Actuaries are very charitable, giving people, and they like to see that. The American Academy of Actuaries, which is the full governing board for both the SOA and the CAS, it's important that you lay all that out there. Again, it just gives a feel for other things outside of your technical prowess, your exams, and what you've done. The other thing that's very, very important is you need to keep your verb tenses consistent. And you need to keep your punctuation consistent. Sometimes people leave off periods at the end, not a big deal. But if sometimes you're doing a period, ending a sentence with a period, and sometimes you're not, that is, because it shows a lack of detail. So again, it's consistency and your verb tenses. If you have left a position for whatever reason, let's say you've been unemployed for a while, which really doesn't happen very often in the actuarial profession, but If it does, make sure it's clear that you have left. And then again, a little explanation as to what you're doing currently. And it, of course, would be something like actively seeking and then the type of position that you're actively seeking. If you're a more senior level person, it's very important that you speak to your accomplishments, things that have affected the bottom line for your company. Of course, any management, how much you've managed, how many people, all that sort of thing. It's very, very important that you have key accomplishments as a part of your resume as well. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone at my firm. Website is www.dwsimpson.com. I have the most tenured actuarial recruiters in the industry. We've been in business for 33 years, and we look forward to continuing to grow with you as the actuarial students and as the senior people in terms of your leadership and all that you give to the actuarial profession. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Bye.